All right, welcome to our first ever episode of our Health Communications Theory and Practice class at Sam Houston State University. We are the Masters of Public Health program, and today we have a very special topic that we wanted to discuss, and we actually have a special guest that we're going to be interviewing today, which is one of my fellow classmates, Randall. Randall has Marfan Syndrome, and we wanted to discuss a little bit on genetic disorders today. And Randall actually agreed to to an interview with us. My name's Ariel. I'm going to be one of the hosts, and I'll let all my other co-hosts introduce themselves as well. But I just wanted to get you guys set and ready for today's podcast episode. Randall, I'll actually go ahead and let you have the mic, and you can kind of introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll introduce our other co-hosts and we'll get started with the interview.
All right. Well, first of all, thank y'all for allowing me to be part of this and to tell you a little bit about my story, my diagnosis with Marfan syndrome. So just to give you a little bit of a backstory, I was diagnosed at the age of 17 with Marfan syndrome. I had experienced symptoms probably throughout the course of my childhood. The first major thing to really happen was at the age of 13. I had a spontaneous pneumothorax, or my left lung collapsed about 70%. I spent 20 days in the hospital and ended up having surgery. Everything was fine. They just thought that was, just something that happened. You fast forward to the age of 16, the right lung collapsed. When I was in the hospital, they discovered issue with my aorta being slightly enlarged, and that kind of led to my diagnosis. So when this topic of genetics and genetic disorders came up, I thought it'd be, really kind of a way to share my story and share some information. So I do appreciate you guys being here and allowing me to talk about it.
All right, perfect. So I do have a couple of questions. There's going to be a couple of us on this. So my name's Ariel, like I mentioned earlier, and I have my co-hosts / classmates, Isaac, Ashley, Chastity, and Johanna, and they're also going to have some questions for you. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this thing off so we don't keep you too long. So I know living with Marfans is probably difficult. So I actually had my main question was, how did your diagnosis affect your perspective in life?
So, when I was diagnosed as a teenager, it didn't affect me a whole lot. At that point, I was in my junior year of high school. I did play basketball, but I had become more interested in agriculture and animal science, and so I was spent the majority of my free time showing pigs. But it did put a little bit of a different spin on things for me. While you fast forward to today, and I'm actually thankful that I've been able to, number one, find out I had the diagnosis. Thankful to live near a major medical center with some of the best doctors in the world who can diagnose and treat the condition. And then as life has went on, you just kind of appreciate things a little bit more and understand it in a little bit different way than when I was younger. I just thought at the time of my diagnosis, no big deal. It doesn't really affect me. I may have heart surgery one day, but that'll probably be 50 years down the road when I'm old. 20 years down the road, it happened. And you kind of think, whoa, hang on a minute. let me appreciate things.
Okay, yeah, that's like, especially to be so young, it's like kind of, I feel like it matures you a lot earlier in life, especially with the future complications. Okay, so I have a second question, which is your life leading up to your diagnosis. So, like me, I was actually diagnosed with epilepsy, which is obviously not a genetic disorder, but it's like prior to those diagnoses, it's like, oh, you know, for a long time they thought I was just acting out as a child. But so, like, what was that for you? Like, was there anything you experienced that was different? And you know, you had these misdiagnoses, or you had your own personal assumptions, like, oh, maybe it's just like a flu or something type situation.
Yeah, so growing up, I was always tall. I was always taller than all of my classmates. I was always really thin. Um, and that's one of the common things with Marfan syndrome that you see is tall and thin. It's not always, but as a child, I had flat feet, and a lot of severe leg pain, which they could never figure out. They just called it growing pains. Like I said, the initial collapsed lung that happened just spontaneously. And so there was some misdiagnoses along the way that probably had they known a little bit more about it and could put two and two together, but with no real family history or anything, they didn't discover it until later. But the biggest thing that I remember was being tall and thin and having really severe leg pains, um, and always being the tallest one in my class.
All right. So my last question for you is, with everything you know now about Marfan syndrome and just like everything in life that you have experienced, was there anything that you wish in your past that you would have done differently, now that you know what you know now, by chance?
Well, I wish I would have become a lot more involved as a teenager and really attended the conferences that they offer annually and gotten to know other people. Um, I felt really shy, I guess, about my diagnosis until a little later on in life. Like I said, I probably didn't really acknowledge it until, um, probably just 5 to 10 years ago, that I really said, maybe I need to think about this in a little bit different perspective. So other than that, I wouldn't really change anything. Maybe I would have, when I went to college the first time, probably uh, stuck with a degree plan that fit a little bit more into what I was going through rather than what I perceived at the time. But ultimately, life leads you where you're going to go, and I fully believe that it's just led me to this point, right where I need to be.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. So I'm going to hand you off to Chastity now. Chastity, whenever you're ready.
Hey guys, so my name is Chastity. Um, I just had a couple of questions for you, Randall. I know that you're a dad, so I just wanted to know, has your diagnosis made you more health conscious in terms of your children's health, since you did get diagnosed in your teens?
Right. It definitely has. Now, my son is 19. He'll be 20 in January. Um, when he was 18 months old, when my wife and I started dating, so we knew. I mean, obviously that there was no chance because I'm not his biological father, but I adopted him when he was 3, and I've raised him as my child since we've been together. And then with my daughter, it did really make me a little bit more health conscious about her physical health and stature, So we started testing early on with her, and thankfully we ruled it out clinically and genetically, because there was a 50-50 chance that I could have passed that on to her. And my wife and I discussed that, prior to having another child, and we decided, whatever would be. And since I kind of, had an idea of how it might be growing up with it, we thought we could handle it. But, even today when I, a knee injury or something, I kind of go back and question, did we really single out the right gene? I mean, I know it, but I worry about it. So it definitely does make it a little bit more health conscious.
Okay. And, I know you mentioned that you said you and your wife had discussed before you had, had another child. And so I just wanted to know, like, has this diagnosis affected your personal relationships in a good way, a bad way?
So personal relationships is, as far as friends and everything like that, it was never a problem. I was bullied in probably middle school into early high school because of my tall, thin stature. But it didn't affect me. I tend to just let things roll off. But, as far as like relationships and things go, I was a little bit older before I started dating. I was very conscious about the stature of and the way I looked. So a little self-conscious, but in every serious relationship that I had, it always came up. It was one of the first things that you kind of put out there to let your partner know that, look, if this goes later into life, this is what may happen. So this is what you need to be prepared for.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm glad, Randall, that you didn't let the haters get to you. And, I'm just glad that you have a support system around you. Well, I'm just going to hand it off to my counterpart. And I just thank you so much for answering our questions.
Thank you, Chastity.
Hi, my name's Ashley.
Go ahead, you guys. You got it.
Okay, my name's Ashley. So I just have 3 questions for you. Were you having any personal symptoms prior to diagnosis that you weren't aware were symptoms until after you were diagnosed? I know that might be a kind of confusing question.
So yeah, like I said, when I was a child, I was very tall and very thin. I had what was diagnosed as growing pains. I had, flat feet, so I was given these special shoes to wear to try to help out, these ugly brown boots that were really part of the bullying that I never wore. So, still to this day, I have issues with that. I had stretch marks on my back as a teenager from growing so fast that, I went from 5'10" to 6'3" or 6'4" my 8th grade year. So really my parents bought a lot of clothes that year, and like I said, I developed the stretch marks. I had many of the signs and symptoms, but we didn't know what it was. We just thought I was, being fed Miracle-Gro. So.
Right. Okay, and my next question for you is, has being diagnosed with this made you become more aware of other disorders that take place due to genetics?
So yes, it has actually. Being diagnosed at an early age and kind of learning about what Marfan Syndrome was, and then the other disorders that are similar to it, such as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I really didn't know a lot about vascular Ehlers-Danlos until we joined this communication class in undergrad with with Dr. Fulton. But I did know about EDS and Loy's Dietz and some of those through the Marfan Foundation's education initiative and the things that they've done throughout the years. So it really did, help me learn and become a little bit more aware of some of the other similar disorders.
Right. Okay, and then my last question for you is, were your doctors beneficial in the information they provided for you upon being diagnosed?
Yes. So I was in Memorial Hermann Hospital when I was actually, thought to have had the specific diagnosis, and then they sent me to Texas Children's to a genetic cardiology clinic, which had ophthalmologist, the geneticist, the cardiologist, into the Houston Medical Center. So when I was diagnosed, and they gave me so much information that was very beneficial for me and my family, and what to look out for, specifically the heart issues that come with it and what to expect. So in that aspect, when you're surrounded by the best doctors in the world, it was very beneficial.
Okay.
All right. Is that all you got for Randall today, Ashley?
That is all. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Ashley.
So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Joanna. Sorry we cut you off earlier.
My bad.
No, you're good. Okay, so hi, my name is Johanna. So Randall, I know that you were first diagnosed. You were in high school and you played basketball, but so did you quit basketball? And go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna ask you, if you were playing in any other sports, and if you had to quit.
So growing up from about age 9 or so, I played basketball, football, and baseball. In the 8th grade, we moved from the Houston area to Trinity, just a little town north of here. And so I didn't play football that year, but I played basketball, and I played basketball into high school. And I quit playing basketball probably right before all of my the diagnosis came and everything, and it was more due to a personal conflict than it was my diagnosis. After my diagnosis, I was told I could no longer play competitive sports. Contact sports. So I wasn't supposed to play basketball anymore, and I definitely couldn't play football. And so at that point, I was pretty involved in agriculture and FFA and showing animals and things of that nature. So it didn't really affect me to stop playing sports. I always thought when I was a kid I would make it to the NBA because I was really tall.
Yeah.
But I was never coordinated. So.
Okay, gotcha. And so, with having your aorta, how did you find your stopping point of what you could and could not do physically?
So, I was told what I should and shouldn't do as far as physical activities, but probably until I was a little bit older, nothing really stopped me. I would go and lift weights and things like that because my friends were, into it, but I knew I couldn't lift very heavy weights. And so what happens is usually when when something is too physically straining on me, I end up with chest pains or something of that nature, and it usually is a reminder that I have to kind of limit myself. As far as anything else, other than really lifting heavy weights or working out, doing strenuous exercises, is really the only limitation I have,
Okay.
even today. So.
Okay, well that's good. So earlier you mentioned that you had a 50-50 chance of passing the gene down, but do you have anyone else in your family that has the gene?
So as far as we know, I'm a spontaneous mutation. We could not link it to anyone in my family. My mother did have heart trouble. She died at 62 from a heart attack, although she was suffering from stage 4 cancer at the time, but she had previous heart surgeries, but they were bypass surgeries, so it wasn't necessarily the same type of heart condition that I had that we knew of. So from all of the when we did the diagnosis and we went through it, we could not pinpoint it to anyone in my family. So we assume I'm a spontaneous mutation. If my parents were still alive, we could probably do genetic testing with them, but it wouldn't change anything in the way of my diagnosis or treatment.
Okay. Well, so my last question is, do you have any advice for people who have been diagnosed with Marfan's recently?
So the best advice I can give is to reach out to the Marfan Foundation, grab a support group, the people that learn as much as you can about it, interact with as many people that you can find that are with it, because it kind of becomes like a big family almost. I had an opportunity to kind of mentor a young man and talk to his family about a year after I had my heart surgery. He was diagnosed with Marfans Syndrome. His dad reached out on a Facebook support group, and I just kind of answered some questions. We started talking, and then he had the same surgery from the same exact surgeon and everything. And I was able to visit him in the hospital and meet his parents and talk to him. And he actually, went on and did some great things with the foundation. He was on TV with Lakewood Church, with Joel Osteen, talking about it. And his family's done a lot of work out in the community. So find a community, find a friend, learn about it, and share what you know, what you find out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. He really could help and has probably helped a whole bunch of people with Marfan syndrome. Well, thank you for answering my questions, Randall. I'm going to hand it off to Isaac now.
Hello, I'm Isaac, and just a few more for you, and then we can wrap it up. But the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what was the effect of your diagnosis on your family when you received it? How did everyone react? What were their thoughts on it? And overall, did it strain any relationships, or was it handled pretty well?
So I was I'm the baby of my family by 12 years. I was a late in life baby. And so as far as that went, my mother and father were extremely concerned. And my mother kind of wanted to wrap me in a little bit of a bubble and, keep me safe. But it didn't strain. If anything, it made my family closer. My siblings have always been supportive, and my extended family, was was always really supportive. So it never strained any relationships. It only made them stronger.
That's encouraging. I know we kind of talked about your doctors and what they did well. Was there anything you wish they could have improved on or better communicated when you received your diagnosis?
Well, like I said, I was diagnosed in Houston with some of the best team that probably could have. The only thing that I do wish at the time is that the same level of care that I received as a teenager could have carried over into my adulthood. I would love to be able to go to one clinic and see multiple doctors instead of having to go to 3 or 4 or 5. Luckily, now my doctors kind of they're all on the same page with the electronic health records and everything like that. So everybody can kind of see what everybody else is doing. But when I was younger, I could go in one day and see, pretty much everybody I needed to see and talk to them. And then as I kind of went into adulthood and, living with this and going to different cardiologists, I really wish people like doctors would have taken the time to kind of listen as an adult like they did as a child. Mm-hmm. I have found doctors now who will do that. The last 2 cardiologists that I've had are very excellent communicators and take the time to, listen and hear me out rather than just, let me listen to you. Oh, we'll see you in 6 months. So that's the only thing that I think that probably could be improved is continuity of care.
That makes sense. Last question for you. What were the biggest questions you had for your, what did you want to know right away?
When was I going to have heart surgery? And what did that look like? And why, if I had all these symptoms before, how come nobody, said anything about this, before? Mm-hmm. And the answers were, well, we just didn't know. It's kind of hard to predict off of one potential symptom or another. Somebody has to sit down and go through a whole checklist of do you meet criteria for all of these things when you sit down and look at the big picture. And genetic testing wasn't really readily available when I was diagnosed. It was still in its early stages and it was very expensive. So luckily now you can go and for a matter of a couple of $100 go to Ancestry and Me and have this genetic testing sent off. So those were the biggest questions. I really wanted to know when I would have to have heart surgery or if I would have to have it at all. That was the biggest concern I had, was because when you think heart surgery, you think death or you think really bad. And in all honesty, it wasn't as bad as I imagined. So.
Well, Randall, thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. We appreciate you just listening to us all kind of ask about you growing up and your process through this diagnosis. So thank you for that. I want to go ahead and pass this back to Ariel and we'll wrap up.
Well,
all right.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Thank you, Randall, for
you let us get all up in your business.
yeah.
Personal.
It's great. I enjoy answering questions about it. If you she would have saw me as a child versus where I'm at today, it would be like night and day. But it's all good. I feel I feel blessed that I'm still here to talk about it. So
That's great.
And we feel blessed for having you to be our very first guinea pig for this podcast. But all right, so we won't keep you too long. So I hope anyone out there that's listening to this podcast, I hope you got a better look into Marfan syndrome, and I hope if there's someone out there that has the diagnosis and you're feeling negative about your diagnosis, that I hope Randall is a positive figure that can show you that even though you got the bullies and whatnot out there, you can still live your life to the fullest. And I thank you so much, Randall, for
we applaud you for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randall.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and appreciate us working together to put a good podcast together. So
yes, perfect. So awesome. I will go ahead and end that here, and hope to see you guys for some more episodes in the future.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 All right.